Good morning, Muscle Feed family. So for today, you're going to need something like either a broomstick or a PVC pipe or a dowel rod, something that you can use to start with these shoulder threading exercises. So most important things when you are doing this shoulder threading, you want to first off pick a spot on the bar where you are able to have your elbows straight during the entire movement. Second thing that you really want to focus on is keeping your core engaged so that you're not hyperextending that low back as you're doing these. So I whipped through about 10 just regular ones over the head, and then these are around the world shoulder threading, or shoulder dislocates is the other name for them. You're going to be starting with 10 that were just regular ones, and then these 5 in each direction. And again, really focusing on making sure that you have a good spot on the bar so that your elbows are not having to bend like crazy to get through that range of motion. You can also take it significantly slower as well. So then you're going to set that down. We're going to move into our next little bit. So coming down to a deep body weight squat and using your elbows to really push those knees apart. You want to make sure that for these movements, you have your whole foot on the ground. So no heels popping up during any of this. Make sure that your entire foot is on the ground and that you are in a comfortable position. So again, coming down into that deep squat, using those knees to push, or using those elbows to push your knees apart. Settling down into that deep squat. And then for the second part, it's a hamstring stretch. And for this, as you're warming up, feel free to have a soft bend in your knees. They may not be completely straight right in the beginning. And then adjust your feet, go back to that body weight squat. For today, you get to pick out your own soundtrack and background music. No Encanto this week. And then again, hands on the ground, or depending on what your flexibility it is, it may be that your hands are on your shins, they may be closer to your feet, wherever you are at that point in time. And then again, progressing as you're able, finding a spot that is at discomfort, but not painful. And again, settling back down into that body weight squat. Making sure with this also that your torso is long. You don't want to be hunching over in that squat. And then come back up to that hamstring stretch. You can alternate straightening one knee at a time. These are called elephant walks. Again, another way to begin to get a little bit more of that hamstring flexibility and mobility. Body weight squats again. Really focusing on pushing those knees apart. Listening to the soothing construction noises behind me. I apologize for that. And then straightening up again. So then coming up, the next thing you're going to do, you are going to need a slightly elevated surface and a heavy weight, or even a moderate or lightweight. Does not need to be a heavy weight. So this is called a Jefferson curl. And what you are going to be doing is leaning over, keeping that core braced, and allowing that weight to pull you down. So the purpose of this is going to be, again, a little bit of hamstring flexibility. And you're also going for some core control. There's strengthening in the thoracic and lumbar spine, the muscles that support those, hamstring lengthening, and definitely core control. Again, you want to make sure that your core is engaged during this entire process. This is one that if you have any pain throughout this range of movement, please set the weight down and stop and go back to just a regular elephant walk or hamstring stretch or seated hamstring stretch. Again, the purpose of this is strengthening and lengthening from a lengthened position. Then you're going to come down to a kneeling lunge, and we're going to work some hip mobility as well as ankle dorsiflexion. So focusing again on having those glutes pushed forward and your core engaged. And you want to really focus on, in this case, my right leg is down. You really want to focus on stretching through that right hip flexor. Making sure that you're not hyperextending in that spine or pushing that belly out and forward without staying engaged. And then switching sides. Again, really focusing on that left hip flexor, and then also the movement through that right ankle. Then coming back up, you're going to go back to your elevated surface and grab your weight. Again, it can be a light weight. It does not have to be a heavy weight. It's basically any kind of feedback that is allowing you to get a little bit of a deeper stretch if your body feels ready for that. If you are struggling to feel ready for this or struggling to feel like you can control it, it is completely fine to scale it back and not use a weight for this exercise. Few more repetitions here. Breathe out when you come up. And then we're going to go back to that ankle dorsiflexion and hip flexor stretch. So again, I always like to put my hands pretty much one on my core and one on my back, really to make sure that I'm bracing and protecting my back while doing these movements, especially if you're someone that really likes to hyperextend your spine, push your belly out, walks around with that big curve in your low back. It can be really helpful to give yourself that additional feedback of bracing into your hand and also having your hand on your low back or even on like the high part of your glutes to make sure that those muscles are also engaged as well. I'm a big fan of, when working a particular muscle group, if able, tapping that muscle group and really trying to like reinforce into my brain that this is what we're working on and this is the muscle that we're trying to engage. One more set of those Jefferson curls. So with the traditional Jefferson curl, you've actually got quite a bit more flexion through the thoracic spine and lumbar spine. Due to my own spinal structure, I do not have as much of that. It's something that I'm always working to improve, but the way my back is structured, I don't have quite as much of that. So again, this is one of those situations where work with what you're given and work with what is comfortable to you. The biggest focus for that exercise, again, is going to be the hamstring stretching, the core control, and strengthening of the low back. And one more time into the hip flexors and ankle dorsiflexion. All right, then standing up, we're going to come back into those body weight squats. This time, kind of move yourself around, shift your weight, get comfortable in the bottom of that squat, push those knees apart, and straighten up again. This time you should feel significantly more like limber and loose. You should have a little bit more flexibility, a little bit more range of motion. If you look back at the beginning versus now, I'm able to fold a little bit more easily, and I do not have the most amazing hamstring flexibility on the planet by any means. So this is always one area of opportunity for me, and one of my favorite hamstring stretches. Usually because by the time going through this whole progression, as you get to the end, you can see quite a bit more hamstring flexibility than you have at the very beginning. And your body weight squat should feel more comfortable as well. Should be able to get that butt a little bit closer to the ground, feel a little bit more comfortable sitting in that body weight squat also. All right, then coming up, we're going to go into that pigeon. So in this case, curling that left leg under at about a 45 degree angle, whatever is comfortable for you, and folding forward over that front leg. And I'm just shifting to give you guys a different view. You can also be upright in that pigeon, or you can fold forward, whatever is more comfortable. And then pushing up to change. And again, either being in that high upright pigeon position or folding forward. And you will definitely have one leg that has better flexibility than the other, one that you're able to fold forward a little bit more easily, and the other one might be a little bit of a struggle, and that's okay. Then in between, you're going to come to your seated split position and just kind of hang out here a little bit and get comfortable. You can take some time leaning forward. And then lean over to the right side. Again, one thing that I want to be a continual focus is always having that core engaged through these movements. You want to make sure that you're bracing. And then over to the left side, same thing. Then bringing your feet forward. This is going to be your seated hamstring stretch. Reaching for those toes, pulling yourself forward. And you are done. Thank you so much for joining me.